My female-dominated workplace is the most toxic pit of snakes I've ever experienced. So this is a story about a 29-year-old female who recently started a job at a company where 90% of her co-workers are women. She says she considers herself to be a fairly progressive person, and at first she didn't think much of it, even though more than a few of her friends and acquaintances had warned her or told her horror stories about working in environments like this one. Most of this person's previous jobs were in startup style companies, so early on, high pressure environments, but the gender ratio was much more balanced, and most people got along and were mostly respectful towards each other. So she had assumed that since the company was advertising itself as a very people-centric, empathic, that kind of workplace, that the fact that it's dominated by women shouldn't really matter because they've got the right culture. But she goes on to say, boy, was I wrong. On the second week of her job, she got yelled at by her boss for not being able to memorize and follow up certain company policies. Second week. And those company policies were so unnecessarily overcomplicated that even the boss who was yelling at her she makes mistakes on a regular basis about these policies. She ended up getting really upset about this interaction, as you would. Can't blame her for that. She thought that she just wasn't good enough for the role, or it was a problem with her rather than with the environment. However, that was just the start of what was going to happen in this job. Friendly faces trash you behind your back. Each of your tiny and insignificant mistakes are momentarily reported to the higher ups, overcomplicating the shit out of just about everything. Country managers and department heads that consider themselves to be goddesses and thus believe that they are entitled to the peasants, i.e. regular employees, worship, while publicly bullying you if you choose not to follow that religion. And that's not even the half of it. So I wanted to take this case study and really dissect it down a little bit. So the first thing that comes to mind for me in this scenario is that most of us will move to the assumption that we are the problem and that something's not right about us, because we take companies and the people who work with them at face value when they say, yes, we've got a great culture, yes, things are excellent here. That's the first mistake. The first mistake is taking people at their face value without validating it yourself. Most of the time, people are pretty upfront and honest, and they're transparent. Most of the time, not always. And they're sometimes in a bit of delulu themselves. Sometimes they think things are great when they really aren't great. So the best thing to do is to trust, but verify. So go in with a level of skepticism, knowing that it's possible that they're being fully transparent and truthful, but that it's not necessarily true, and you need to validate those things for yourself. The second part about this is that it sounds to me like this 29-year-old woman has been through a bunch of shit in just the first few weeks. And to me, that is a massive red flag. I would immediately be seeking out alternative employment. I would be looking to go somewhere else, because if the culture is accepting of being screamed at in front of your colleagues, and that's kind of accepted and it's not called out, that's just the start of how bad it's going to be, and things are going to get worse. Don't hold out thinking that things are going to get better. They won't. The only thing that can make things get better is a wholesale change of leadership at the top, and that's never going to happen. Well, it's not going to happen. It very rarely happens, and when it does, there's a chance that you'll get the wrong type of person in again, because the people who selected people into those leadership roles quite possibly think that these are the right type of people to lead such a business. So when it comes down to it, if you find yourself in a situation where you are getting yelled at, where you are constantly being micromanaged, where you are constantly being berated in public, you need to get the fuck out of there. It is not going to help your career. Even if it's a job that pays really well and has the great title, it's not worth your sanity and your mental well-being to stick it out. Ideally, you would immediately start searching for a new role, one where you are going to be much better at looking into how the culture works and getting a real feel for what the culture is like before you start. And I do have one really good tip for this during the interview process. So one question you can use to gauge the culture of the organization that you are about to, or potentially about to join, is you ask the hiring manager, hopefully they're in the interview, they almost always should be, ask them, hey, how would you describe the culture of the business? And almost all of the people are gonna say the same thing. They're gonna say, it's great, we all work as a team, it's a bit fast paced, there's pressure, but we all pitch in and we get stuff done. And basically they're gonna talk about all the positives and they're not gonna say anything negative. Now this comes from one of two things, right? So firstly, they genuinely believe that and potentially it's genuinely true, which is a great thing for you. The second part is they genuinely believe that, but they aren't aware of what the culture is like because they're so disconnected from it, or they're delusional and they think that it really is like that when it's not. The best way, so first you've asked that question and you're going to get a boilerplate generic answer about, hey, everything's great here, it's amazing, it's rainbows and unicorns, because they want to hire you for this role. The reason they're interviewing you is because they think you are potentially a really good fit for this job at this business. The follow-up question is, what would one of your employees say if I asked them that same question? And this can make people get a little bit uncomfortable, but it's really a useful way to gauge their position, see how they react to that question. If it makes them uncomfortable, potentially they've lied, or potentially they're not sure how their current employees would answer that question. And then the third and final follow-up question to that is, that sounds really good. You know, that culture sounds like it'd be a great fit for me. I like working in environments like that. Would it be okay if I had a conversation with any one of your employees that are potentially in the team that I would be joining? I'd like to ask them about what they think of the culture, and I'd really like to get that first-hand experience of what things are like. And now here's where the potential red or green flag comes up. Red flag is, sorry, we don't do that. You'll just, that's not something we do. We don't do that around here. You'll just have to take my word for it, or something to that effect. The green flag is, yeah, of course, no worries. I can tee that up, I can schedule that for you right now, or they get up and say, let's go and have a chat to the team right now. That means they're confident that what they think they said is true and that you really do have a positive workplace culture and that you're going to actually get the positive vibes that they're talking about during your everyday work experience. So that's one tip you can use in that to really vet out these employers before you get started. But yeah, if I was this 29-year-old woman, I would be getting the fuck out of there post haste.